School, they were empty today. The doors were locked. The classes were canceled after students began receiving death threats. Once again, the violent left-wing mob in America has been unleashed. We sent Lawrence Jones down to Covington, Kentucky earlier today to see what locals think about the vilification of some of their students. Take a look at this.
Do you think there was a rush to judgment on this whole situation?
I think that on multiple levels, actually on both sides, there's a rush to judgment.
Yeah, there was absolutely a rush to judgment.
But I feel like that's what happens now with social media is, you know, somebody with a cell phone will post a clip and then we see that and we make our first reaction, yeah.
So with little evidence, no context, yes, the hate Trump media vilifying a group of teenagers over what is a 30-second clip showing one high school student who was wearing a Make America Great Again hat, looking at a Native American man who walked over to him while others danced in the background. Of course, there was so much more to that you got in the 30-second clip, but that did not stop the rush to judgment. No due process, no presumption of innocence, right? How many times do we go through this? Now, just after a March for Life rally in Washington, D.C., the Native American man you just saw, named Nathan Phillips, he walked up to the group of high school students, not the other way around. And according to Phillips, he was drumming to diffuse what was a tense situation after another radical group on the scene, named the Black Hebrew Israelites, targeted the high school students with some of the most despicable, racist, derogatory language you will ever hear. And according to the Washington Post, this militant group has frequently raised red flags for their anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, anti-gay, anti-Asian, anti-white views. Their harassment of these high school students was revolting. Take a look.
This is the religion of America. That's Make America Great Again. A bunch of child molesters.
That's right.
Just like your damn Donald Trump.
Look at all these dusty crackers with that racist garbage on. Look at these dirty crackers. Crickets.
A bunch of future school shooters.
That's right.
You crackers got some damn nerves. That's why everybody hates your ass.
That's right.
The biggest terrorist on the face of this earth is the pale-faced man, woman, and child.
Without seeing any of this context, without even asking any questions, of course, the mainstream media, they rush to judgment, as they often do. Now, after all, red MAGA hats were involved. Oh, so they must be Trump people. And according to many on the left, the original 30-second clip was more than enough to demonize these teenagers and try to ruin their lives forever. They were called racist and bigots and much worse. And others called for them to be expelled from school. Some called for violence against the kids. A writer, NBC, Saturday Night Live, actually offered to perform a sex act for anybody who punches the Covington student in the face. Former CNN contributor Reza Islan tweeted, quote, "Honest question, have you ever seen a more punchable face than this kid's? It's a kid." Follow the words, kid. One so-called journalist was fired after he wrote, quote, "Well, I just want these people to die." Simple as that. Every single one of them and their parents. And meanwhile, Kathy Griffin back in the news calling for these high schoolers, their names and addresses to be publicly released, doxxed. And sadly, the vitriol didn't end there. Rosie O'Donnell weighing in, calling the kids horrible, smug, and then other names. Actor Patton Oswalt calling the Kentucky teen a privileged little bleep. Deborah Messing jumping in, calling him a, quote, mocking, condescending, disrespecting a-hole. And on The View, a rare moment of truth. Why did they do it? Let's listen to Joy Behar.
Many people admitted they made snap judgments before these other facts came in. But is it that we just instantly say that's what it is based on what we see in that moment and then have to walk stuff back when it turns out we're wrong? Why is that? Do we keep making the same mistake?
Because we're desperate to get Trump out of office. That's why.
You know, just imagine becoming so deranged every second, minute, hour of every day with Trump rage and hate that you smear a young teenager over a smirk that he's wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Imagine being so angry with the President of the United States that you actively try to ruin the life of a child that you don't even know. Imagine being so full of hate and rage that you send death threats to a group of Catholic school kids that you know nothing about. But on NBC News, the teenager seen in the now infamous video was asked if he wanted to apologize. Watch this.
Do you feel that you owe anybody an apology? Do you see your own fault in any way?
As far as standing there, I had every right to do so. My position is that I was not disrespectful to Mr. Phillips. I respect him. I'd like to talk to him. I mean, in hindsight, I wish we could have walked away and avoided the whole thing.
You know, I wonder if NBC News, are they going to pose the same question to the black Hebrew Israelites that called those kids every name in the book? Now, sadly, on the left, this is nothing new. No due process, no presumption of innocence, no basic fundamental American fairness, all because of political bias. High school kids, look at your screen. Cheryl Atkinson, she put together an extensive list. And by the way, not the complete list, 64 pieces of fake news, huge stories in the Trump era. We saw it last Friday. We saw it on Sunday, all driven by hatred. Nearly every media outlet now in the United States has been responsible for what is a constant stream of faulty reporting, propaganda, misinformation. Each story attempting to malign the president or someone around him or his family. It's sad, it's petty, and it erodes all confidence, not only in the press, but in government, and worse. It often destroys the reputation of good, innocent people. That's why we on this program, we always say, don't rush to judgment. Give due process, wait for the facts to come out. In the 90s, when everyone else in the media, when they were accusing Richard Jewell of being the sole bomber in 1996, the Olympic bomber, because he was, single, white, and as the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported at the time, he fit the profile of the lone bomber because he lived with his mother. This is what we are saying. Take a look. Richard Jewell, 33, a former law enforcement officer, fits the profile of the lone bomber. This profile generally includes a frustrated white man who is a former police officer, a member of the military or police wannabe who seeks to become a hero. You see that in the newspaper. What do you think?
Well, you know, it wasn't me. You know, I'd like to know where they got their profile from. Well, you know, several parts of that, you know, police wannabe. In the state of Georgia, I am a certified peace officer. I'm just not currently working for a police department.
He actually thanked me. He was listening to me on the radio the day the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported that, and he said, you were the only one that said, that doesn't mean he did it. It ends up, Richard Jewell was a hero that day. And during every high-profile incident, when the left-wing mob rushes to judgment, Duke Lacrosse, fake rape allegations, UVA, Ferguson, Missouri, Baltimore, Maryland, Freddie Gray, Justice Kavanaugh, the Cambridge police, so many more cases, we always urge restraint. They always rush to judgment. Take a look. We're talking about the besmirching of people's character and trying this and rushing to judgment and trying this in the media. That's where I have my biggest problem. I understand a community upset about an 18-year-old kid that is now dead. I want to get to the truth here. But like in every other high-profile case, there's this rush to judgment. You saw the prosecutor, Marilyn Mosby. Did you feel this was a rush to judgment, a political prosecution in place? Do you feel this was maybe done so quickly to appease those in the streets saying no justice, no peace? Is not fair to Professor Ford. It is not fair to Judge Kavanaugh. The allegations are serious. This shouldn't be about politics and rushing to judgment and no due process and no presumption of innocence. You know, in 1996, Richard Jewell taught me a valuable lesson. So on this program, we don't try to ruin the lives of ordinary Americans. We believe in our Constitution, due process, the presumption of innocence for all people. Those are inalienable, God-given rights. It is paramount to the survival of our constitutional republic. We'll have a lot more on this throughout the show tonight. But first, it's time for another chapter of our Hannity Watch on Socialism. Like it or not, freshman Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is fast becoming the face of the Democratic Party, and her grandiose ideas are downright scary. On Monday, she bashed the American dream and called making a lot of money, quote, immoral. Okay, take a look.
What kind of society do we want to live in? Are we comfortable with a society where someone can have a personal helipad while this city is experiencing the highest rates of people experiencing homelessness since the Great Depression? Where do we draw the line in excess? Maybe this idea of idealizing this outcome of maybe one day you too can be a billionaire and own more than millions of families combined is not an aspirational or good thing.
Do you think it is moral for individuals to, for instance, do we live in a moral world that allows for billionaires? Is that a moral outcome in and of itself?
It's not. It's not.
That's the person that is overseeing Wall Street on the all-powerful House Financial Services Committee. Think about that. A socialist overseeing the world's premier capitalist market in the world's greatest economy. Every other economy reacts to our economy. And it gets even worse. Politico reporting that she will also serve on the very important Government Oversight Committee. And meanwhile, when she's not attacking the American dream, she's actually making a prediction. The world is going to come to an end in 12 years because of global warming. Take a look.
Millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And like, this is the war. This is our World War II.
This is now your new radical, extreme, socialist Democratic Party. Don't believe me? Think again. Look at this new poll from Axios. 74% of Democrats, they're so radicalized, would actually consider voting for Ocasio-Cortez if she were old enough to run for president. Now, make no mistakes, Democrats will definitely choose someone just as radical. For example, Kamala Harris. After she announced that she was running for president on Monday, well, the California senator raised over $1.5 million in just 24 hours and is seen as a likely frontrunner. Don't be fooled. The media is going to try to paint her as an experienced moderate. Her agenda is just as radical, though, as Ocasio-Cortez. Remember, she compared ICE, those that put their life on the line every day to protect our borders. Well, there's a perception that they're just like the KKK. And of course, she supports California's sanctuary city and state policies and showed that she doesn't care a lot about due process. Remember, she was one of the leaders in the rush to judgment on Justice Kavanaugh, even releasing a deceptively edited video. Why to smear him? And speaking of video, Harris, while serving as California Attorney General in 2016, she teamed up with Planned Parenthood to draft legislation targeting pro-life activist David Leiden. Remember him? After he exposed in a series of undercover videos discussing the sale of fetal body parts. It's on tape, and it didn't stop there. That's illegal. Harris then sent agents to raid his home in what his attorneys called an oppressive abuse of government power. And it happened all while she was running for the U.S. Senate on a pro-Planned Parenthood platform. And it gets even worse. While she was championing women's rights in that platform, one of her own longtime aides, Larry Wallace, oh, guess what? He was forced to resign late last year after a $400,000 sexual harassment settlement came to light. And shortly after, Harris denied any knowledge. But her hometown paper, the Sacramento Bee, they fired back in a blistering editorial writing, quote, Wallace wasn't out on the periphery of Harris's staff. He was a senior aide that she knew for 14 years, hardly a stranger. For Harris to flatly deny any knowledge of this settlement seems, shall we say, far-fetched. This is hypocrisy. It's plain and simple. But it's an all too familiar story among Democrats, especially on the issue of border security. We have an update, Hannity Watch on the border today and the government shutdown. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they're still refusing to even sit with the president who invites them almost daily, never mind compromise, to end the government shutdown and protect our borders from drugs and that element of cartels and others, gang members and worse. Of course, we know the risk over an unsecure border. 90% of the heroin in this country comes through our southern border. Police unions are warning of the deadly consequences if we do remove ICE. and we continue to monitor developments on the suspected murderer, this one in Nevada, believed to be in the U.S. illegally. Trace Gallagher will be here tonight. He'll have the very latest later in the program. And now the president is still standing strong. He's tweeting, "Without a wall, our country can never have border or national security. With a powerful wall or steel barrier, crime rates and drugs will go substantially down all over the U.S. The Dems know this, but want to play political games. Must finally be done correctly. No cave." Now, this comes as the president is still moving forward with plans to deliver a State of the Union address, even after Speaker Pelosi urged him not to give it because of the phantom shutdown security concerns that she made up in her own mind. Tonight, it is still unclear whether the speech will be delivered in the D.C. swamp or perhaps somewhere much better. All right, joining us now to discuss all of tonight's breaking news, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Sarah, good to see you. Is the president have any reaction to Ocasio-Cortez, the Congresswoman's prediction that millennials think like we're like the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change? Any official White House position?
Look, I don't think we're going to listen to her on much of anything, particularly not on matters that we're going to leave into the hands of a much, much higher authority, and certainly not listen to the freshman congresswoman on when the world may end. We're focused on what's happening in the world right now. We wish that Democrats like herself would engage in that conversation, help us fix some of the current problems we know exist, and work with us to get some things done, particularly on the border, fixing the national and humanitarian crisis. That's the kind of stuff we're focused on, not things that we're going to leave up to the hands of something and someone much more powerful than any of us.
All right, let's go to the issue, the shutdown, where we are. The president made a proposal to the Democrats. By the way, they rejected it before it was even, or some of them rejected it before they even heard what was in it. But these are supposed to be things that the Democrats like: Dreamers, DACA kids, et cetera. On top of 4 or 5 years ago, all the Democrats were in favor of building the wall and sounded like the president, but yet they have been offered one invitation after another. They refuse to sit down. They send aides and surrogates instead of themselves sitting down. At this point, it seems like the president will have to just go it alone. Do you have any news about that on any front?
Look, Sean, I certainly hope the president has to go it alone. One thing I do know is that Republicans have been in lockstep with the president because we actually believe in getting something done. The fact that Democrats went out before the president even put his proposal forward on Saturday and rejected it shows us exactly where they are, and that is that they're not looking to solve problems, but they're simply looking to kick the can down the road, obstruct any progress being made, whether it's on this issue or probably anything else. We've seen no indication that Democrats want to work with the president to actually fix the problems facing this country. I think it's a sad day in America when Nancy Pelosi rejects an idea before she's even heard it. But unfortunately, I think that she's showing us exactly who she is, what her priorities are, and that's not the American people. The only person in this process and in this back and forth that is actually doing something to help the 800,000 federal workers, that's actually doing something to stop the opioid crisis, stop human trafficking, stop the national security crisis at our border is the president. Democrats claim to care about these people, claim to want to fix problems, yet they don't want to do anything about it. They want to ignore the problem and attack the president. And I think that is a very, very sad day. And I think it shows us what a leader is and what a leader isn't. The president's a leader, and Nancy Pelosi is nothing more than an obstructionist.
Let's go to the latest State of the Union address. Where are we there?
Nancy Pelosi invited the president. He accepted. She cited security concerns as a potential reason to delay that. The United States Secret Service and DHS have addressed those concerns, and we're moving forward until something changes on that front.
Will the president consider other options if the House is not open to her? I don't know where you're going to be able to get at least 535 members of Congress and invited guests, in Washington. I'm sure there's a place, but I just don't know where that is.
I don't know if there would be a place that all of those members would attend, but the president's focus is on speaking to the American people. It's something he does every single day. Nobody does it better. And if Nancy Pelosi chooses to go in that direction, the president will continue to speak to the American people, and I'm sure he'll do that on that evening as well.
All right, let me ask you about what happened Friday with BuzzFeed. And if it's true, you had literally every major newspaper, every single network, so-called news channels, over 200 times go for if it's true and then spend hours after hour after hour saying impeachment without any verification on their own. Cheryl Atkinson has a list of 67 media mistakes in the Trump era, the definitive list. I printed out literally 47 small print pages of the Washington Examiner of mistakes the media has made in their reporting about the president in 1 year alone, and that would be 2017. His reaction to it, and does now the president's branding of fake news, is that forever etched into the minds of the American people when they see events like this on Friday and then followed by Covington and what happened to those students?
Honestly, Sean, we hope not. We hope fake news doesn't become the forever brand of the news media, because it's not good for the country. As the president said, he'd love for people to report things accurately. I think what happened with BuzzFeed is a great lesson for the media. Quit trying to be first and start trying to be right. We've seen time and time again where they run out there with these outrageous, ridiculous stories. One person reports it to begin with, and then they all jump on it. We saw it again with the Covington students. I've never seen people so happy to destroy a kid's life. When that becomes the norm in the media in America, simply because they're associated with this president, that is disgraceful, and that should never happen. Let's hope that this is a lesson to all of the media, to everyone. Let's focus on getting things right, not getting them first.
All right, Sarah, thank you so much for being with us. Coming up next, the great one, Mark Levin, live. And later, Lawrence Jones is live in Kentucky, asking residents what they think about the media rushing to judgment in the Covington High School story. You won't see this anywhere else. Plus, big breaking deep state news tonight. The Hill's John Solomon, an explosive report. The Clintons feeding the Russia phony narrative, believe it or not, to the FBI, and we have the evidence. Everything we've been telling you about for years is proving to be true. Biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in the history of the country. That and more coming up straight ahead. All right, like I've been saying night after night, a brand new far-left radicalism is now gripping the Socialist Democratic Party in this country. They want to abolish ICE, open borders, baseless smear jobs. The new left committed to destroying the president and his agenda, and in the process, that would mean your prosperity at all costs. That is not one of their priorities. Joining us now to talk about this and much more, I call him the Great One, the host of the #1 show Sunday nights, 10 Eastern here on Fox, Life, Liberty, and Levin. The Great One, thank me. Listen, we got a lot going on in this country. We got a rush to judgment. Look at BuzzFeed. We've got a push. Nancy Pelosi can't even sit down. She's so pulled to the left by her party. The president is given on DACA, on Dreamers, everything they said they wanted. They still won't sit down with him. Then you've got a lot of Democrats, and we'll see more during the presidential campaign, wanting 70% taxes and confiscation and redistribution of wealth. What do you make of it all?
Well, what a mess. Let me start with the media. Poll after poll, survey after survey shows that the media are liberal and Democrat, and they don't disappoint liberals and Democrats. We have a packed media with a groupthink mentality. And I wrote this down before I came here. There are no uniform binding standards among news outlets. No clear line between news and opinion. This is an opinion show. I give an opinion, you give an opinion. That's clear. But news is different, isn't it? No universal rules of professional conduct for journalists that apply to lawyers and doctors and electricians and plumbers and so forth. Nothing. No particular experience required. Chuck Todd, Chris Cuomo, Stephanopoulos, their experience are as Democrat hacks. No commitment to objectivity, and that's the bottom line. No commitment to truth-telling. The result is old-fashioned yellow journalism. Scandalous, sensational, intellectually corrupt. So what we have now is the fourth estate has become the fifth column. Mass media in this country, they were committed to Hillary Clinton's election. Now they're committed to ousting Donald Trump. Every single day. They're sloppy. They misreport. They don't care. They figure they'll throw out an apology if they must. They try to destroy the president, his family, anybody associated with him, his staff, Kavanaugh, anything. They have never treated liberal Democrats this way. I'll give you a perfect example. We want 10 years of Donald Trump's income taxes. Well, I want 10 years of the Pelosi's income taxes. They're multimillionaires. She's the Speaker of the House. No legislation or appropriation gets through without her. How come the media don't call for 10 years of hers? And how about Dianne Feinstein, all the investments that she and her husband have made in Red China? We don't have a China special counsel investigation to talk about collusion. And the media promote the progressive agenda, climate change, open borders, big government. And of course, every millennial is supposed to be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I don't know any millennial that's a Marxist like she is. I know millennials who volunteered to serve in the military, who are police officers, who are firefighters, who are doing great things for this country. Every millennial is not a radical nut job going through the socialist talking points. Now, we got to get rid of these billionaires. I'm happy, Soros, Stars, and so forth, but let's talk the truth. It's the American dream, not the Soviet dream. John Rockefeller, we're supposed to hate him. Thanks to him, we have energy, natural gas, and oil. He became a multi-billionaire. So what? John Walton, we have Walmart, where people can get things at a decent price, and they employ tens of thousands of average Americans. Great, the family's worth billions. So what? Weyerhaeuser, you like toilet paper? You like writing paper? You can thank Weyerhaeuser. Bill Gates, lefty, Microsoft, revolutionized computers. Andrew Carnegie made the production of steel possible that we use today. Jeff Bezos, I'm no fan of this guy, but changed completely how we buy. Andrew Mellon financed the ability for us to have electricity in every home. Henry Ford, I can go on and on. Now, multi-billionaires. What has Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez created? Any job? Part-time job? How about Bernie Sanders? What have they created? So where's all this money going to go? 70% tax bracket. Who's going to decide who gets what? The Department of Agriculture? The Department of Energy? The EPA? These people waste $125 billion a year, according to the GAO. Americans do not like big, authoritarian, centralized government and 2 million bureaucrats pushing them around. So why do we confer health care upon them? And what does she know exactly? Nothing. Go to the supermarket. There's capitalism. 20 different types of bread. 30 different types of wine from all over the world. 5 different types of fish. I can't even tell what fish. Go to the supermarket. Look at all the different things you get. We live better than kings and queens lived 150 and 200 years ago. Look at all the things around you. That's created by capitalism. Capitalism and freedom, individualism, the American people. They're about government, power, edicts, fiats. That's what she's all about. And Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, please come on my Fox show on Sunday. I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about capitalism versus Marxism and socialism. I want to talk to you about some of your ideas. I know you go to these slobbering interviews and so forth. I promise to be respectful, have enough guts and enough intelligence, because my theory, Sean Hannity, is this. She is a media creation. That's all she is. And let some conservatives who will treat her with respect interview her. I would request an interview.
Great one. You better get it in the next 12 years, because she said the world is going to end. I wish you a lot of luck in that endeavor, and I'd love to see that interview. I think that was one of your finest monologues you've ever given on this show about what is the greatest economic system that has created more freedom, more opportunity, more wealth than anyone ever imagined. And we can compare it to those countries that have chosen the path some radicals now want to take us down. Great one. We'll watch Sunday night, 10 p.m., Life, Liberty, Levin. You don't want to miss it. All right, when we come back, Lawrence Jones is in Kentucky tonight, right outside Covington Catholic High School. And he asked people in town what they thought of the media, their typical rush to judgment. And we have huge breaking news from John Solomon tonight, an explosive new report, how the Clintons influenced the FBI and fed them false information about Russia. Straight ahead. All right, following the media's typical rush to judgment over the Covington High School student controversy, we sent our own Lawrence Jones to Covington, Kentucky, to ask residents what they think about the media's coverage of this story. Let's take a look.
Do you think there was a rush to judgment on this whole situation? And
I think that on multiple levels, actually on both sides, there was a rush to judgment. The students were obviously provoked by the hate group that was there.
Yeah, there was absolutely a rush to judgment. This is indicative of how the media works. If you would have been given the whole story before they went ahead and put that news clip on, none of the uproar would have ever happened.
The first video I saw was pretty upsetting. Like, I thought the boy from the Catholic school was being super rude. But, you know, there's other things have been released, and it looks like maybe we don't have the whole story. But I feel like that's what happens now with social media is, you know, somebody with a cell phone will post a clip, and then we see that, and we make our first reaction. Yeah.
Then I watched some of the subsequent things that came out. The full version. My position changed.
do you feel like the media is more and more rushing to good judgment, putting things out there, and then people just react?
Yeah.
Without all the facts.
I think they need to look into the facts more, you know. There's too much of the media, just one-sided story, how they feel.
Well, I think the important lesson is to wait and listen to all the facts and understand that everybody's perspective is valid, even though those perspectives might be different. I think many people reacted too quickly, and there's more to this story, and people should listen to each other.
Now, even Whoopi Goldberg today asked why so many did again rush to judgment, but wait until you hear how revealing Joyless Behar's answer is. This is priceless, but a rare moment of honesty.
Many people admitted they made snap judgments before these other facts came in. But is it that we just instantly say that's what it is based on what we see in that moment and then have to walk stuff back when it turns out we're wrong? Why is that? Do we keep making the same mistake?
Because we're desperate to get Trump out of office. That's why.
All right, joining us now with much more is Hannity Show correspondent, Fox News contributor, Campus Reform editor-in-chief Lawrence Jones, and America First Action senior advisor Sean Spicer. You know, I'm watching Lawrence, and I'm thinking, okay, everyone got their 30 seconds. They saw the red hats. They ignored the Hebrew Israelite group that hates everybody, that precipitated this and called these kids all these names. And I am just blown away at how horrible people can be in the media. They didn't even ask questions.
Well, Sean, that goes to the heart of this story is that we didn't know all the facts. I mean, Sean, I was at home watching this. I didn't go to social media, but when I saw the 2 minutes, I was like, oh, man, this looks bad. But I knew enough to know not to react based on just the little information that I got. And a lot of the people out here said the same thing. They reacted and didn't know the full story. But this goes to the media. They intentionally did this. If it wasn't for people digging into this story, trying to get the full picture, we would still believe this. And the sad part about this, Sean, is lives can be ruined over this. These are kids. And I understand there may be some historical stuff at this campus, at this Catholic school, but that's not the situation that was happening in Washington, D.C. at the time, and it's up to the media to discover the facts, and that's what we're trying to do out here today.
Got to see Sean Spicer, the whole tape. What we then saw what these kids, that they were verbally abused by this radical group that the media didn't talk about. Also, you know, we see this face-to-face confrontation. Now, it was, I think, Indigenous Peoples Day, or there was a protest or whatever, and this Native American leader walks over, probably for the right reasons. He said he was praying, and that's what part of what he was doing, but he walked over to the student, continued to play the drum, and the student tried to say he smiled to be respectful, to show that he's not a threat, and that they weren't the ones responsible.
Well, that's right. I mean, the bottom line is on the heels of the BuzzFeed story last week, this is another example of the media, and it's not just a rush to judgment. I've heard that phrase over and over again. it's a rush to condemn Trump and Trump supporters. Because each time that we see one of these instances, it's them going after conservatives, going after Trump supporters. It never seems to go the other way. If we stop for a minute and realize what happened here, right? We had one CNN contributor say that these kids should be punched in the face. And yet there's a group of anti-Semitic, hateful people that are part of this entire narrative that have been left out of the entire story. These are the people who incited all of this. These are the people who that Native American leader was supposedly helping to calm both sides. These students were sitting there waiting for their bus, but the media and others jumped to condemn anybody that's not just a Trump supporter, but they, these kids were where they're wearing their hats, shows you how quick people are willing to go after anybody that supports the president. So everyone keeps talking about the rush to judgment, and I get that. That's always been a problem in the media. But what's really different now is the rush to go after Trump supporters.
I think well said.
They didn't vet the story. They didn't vet the story, Sean. They didn't even see that the guy wasn't even a Vietnam veteran. Okay, that's simple reporting. They can research it. They didn't do that, and that shows you that they took a side.
And like they did 2 days prior with BuzzFeed. Well, we haven't independently confirmed, but then we'll spend 10 hours talking about impeachment as if it's true. And they never report on the deep state. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Sean. Speaking of which, we have a stunning new report just out, broken by John Sullivan, how Hillary Clinton's campaign and the FBI, well, they connected several times. We'll tell you about real collusion that the rest of the media will ignore. Big story when we get back. Stunning new details tonight on the witch hunt against President Trump. A new article from John Solomon in The Hill revealing how the Clinton machine flooded the FBI with what they claim was Trump-Russia dirt until agents finally bit. Absolutely stunning. And by the way, there's still no evidence of collusion. Joining us now, investigative reporter at The Hill, John Solomon, author of the new bestseller, The Case Against the Democratic House Impeaching Trump. Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz is with us. John, let's start with your story. It's breathtaking to me because the Clintons paid for the phony Russian dossier. Mueller's team knew about it. It was spread as propaganda to influence the election, and never made it a part of any part of the investigation.
Yeah, no, listen, more than a half dozen times between July and October, Clinton acolytes, Clinton emissaries, Clinton paid contractors are walking in the same information from different directions. It's Christopher Steele in London. It's Christopher Steele at State Department. State Department goes to FBI. Christopher Steele goes to Bruce Orr. Bruce Orr goes to the FBI. A lawyer for the DNC and Clinton campaign, Michael Sussman, goes to the FBI general counsel, hands him some alleged cyber evidence connecting Trump and Russia. That walks in. It makes its way to the investigators. It's what one FBI official called to me saturation strategy, which is if you walk it in one time, it's going to be suspect because it's coming from the Clintons. If it comes from 6, 7, 8 different directions, FBI agents are more likely to think, well, there must be smoke. Maybe there's fire. We better investigate.
And how do you connect this all back to the Clintons?
Well, it all starts with Christopher Steele, right? They're paying Christopher Steele through Perkins Coie, and Christopher Steele goes to Orr. Christopher Steele goes to London FBI. Christopher Steele goes to the State Department. Perkins Coie goes to the FBI. Harry Reid goes to the FBI. On and on and on. All of these people are apologists, supporters, contractors for the FBI. Glenn Simpson goes to Bruce Orr. That gets to the FBI in August. It's a saturation strategy. All these different Clinton connected people are trying to flood the FBI in hopes that they bite on the information.
You know, Professor, when we talk about all of these high-ranking officials, FBI, DOJ, we now know all hated Donald Trump. They all one even said she should win 100 million to 0. And we know, and I brought this up the other night with you, if I deleted subpoenaed emails and cleaned my hard drive and broke up my devices, as great a defense lawyer as you are, I don't think you could get me off. But they protected her. But then they paid for the Russian dirt. How do we go through this whole investigation about Russian influence and ignore paid for Russian lies by the other campaign?
Look, from day one, before they ever appointed a special counsel, which was a big mistake, I called for the appointment of a nonpartisan expert commission like the 9/11 Commission looking into the whole 2016 election and Russian efforts to influence the outcome without pointing fingers, without arguing who is criminally responsible. The goal would have been to get all this information out. We would have learned this much earlier. And the real goal is to make sure Russia can never again try to influence any election in the United States or in any Western democracy. When you appoint a special counsel, you do two things. Number one, you put a target on the back of a particular person, namely the President of the United States. Number two, you do everything in secret, everything behind closed doors. No opportunity to produce exculpatory evidence. If you have a commission, you hear evidence from all sides. It's open to the public. We would have learned all of this. The 2016 election was a mess on all sides. And we have to get to the bottom of why it was a mess and to make sure it never happens again. But we know one side did have Russian information they paid for. You know, Christopher Steele, we now know, hated Donald Trump, fired for lying and leaking, John. And yet still, he was trying to feed Robert Mueller from the emails through Bruce Orr. Did you get my information to Mueller, the special counsel?
Yeah, there's an anecdote in my column in The Hill tonight, Sean, that shows another way he tried to do it. So Steele's fired on November 1st for his alleged violations of FBI rules. And a few days later, David Corn, another supporter of Clinton, a liberal journalist at a magazine, walks in a new version of the dossier, one that's been developed since Steele's been fired. He gives it to who else? James Baker, the guy who took the earlier evidence, and he walks it into the FBI again. This process of Steele being able to get this information in from all different angles, that's the real story here. It's the real misuse of political opposition research and pretending it was counterintelligence evidence.
Real quick, Professor.
You're right, talking about it. Political, but it's not a crime. It's a political sin, but it's not a crime. That's why a special commission was so much better than a prosecutor looking to point criminal fingers at somebody.
All right, great work, John Solomon. On top of your report from last week, we'll stay on the deep state. When we come back, Trace Gallagher, disturbing new report involving ICE, MS-13 gangs, chilling, straight ahead. Our own Trace Gallagher, he has a live report on the horrific murders of 4 people in Nevada. Trace, the latest.
Sean, this killing spree happened in northern Nevada. Police do not have a motive. They do have a suspect, and because of strong forensic evidence, they believe 19-year-old Wilber Martinez Guzman is the only suspect. Guzman has been in the country illegally for about a year and is now being held on burglary and immigration charges, but murder charges will come this week. Police say on January 10th, Guzman robbed and killed a 56-year-old woman in Gardnerville, about 15 miles south of Carson City. 3 days later, a 74-year-old woman was murdered less than a mile away, and last Wednesday an 81-year-old man and his 80-year-old wife were killed inside their home just outside of Reno. Meantime, in New York, Long Island is using a sanctuary policy to order immigration agents out of the Nassau Correctional Center. Nassau County has become ground zero for the brutal and lethal MS-13 gang, and law enforcement unions say getting rid of ICE agents in jails will surely end up costing more lives, but Nassau County Executive Laura Curran says removing ICE will lower fears among illegal residents and strengthen community policing. Sean.
All right, Trace Gallagher, is that a manufactured crisis? All right, we'll always be fair and balanced. We're not the hate Trump media. And let not your heart be troubled, because Laura Ingraham standing by with a great show. Laura.